Hey guys, welcome back. In the previous video I went over how to just the general settings of the Arnold render view. In this video I'm going to show you how to render out a single frame and how to do a sequence of images if you have an animation. As I mentioned earlier that I have a basic animation setup over here. And I'm just going to use a sky dome for now, just for this demo. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over some of the render settings. So to access the render settings, what you are going to do is go to Windows, go to Rendering Editors, and Render Settings. Another way to access this is to go to your this icon at the top that has like the setting gear, and it looks like, it's next to all of the rendering options. So you don't want to use the render view and all of that. You only want to use the Arnold render whenever you're working with, Arnold. That's one thing. So there's a few settings that you can go over by default. This is just going to say none probably, or something else. You can always change that, and this is going to be the name of your image that renders out, and this is going to be the format. So right now we've selected the image format as PNG, so this is going to be cube.png. You can change the format if you want, based on your need. You can, right now we're at a single frame. We can change that if we want, but I'll go over that later. So you can render out your alpha channel along with it. And when you scroll down, you'll see that you have a tab called image size. Now here is where we will change the dimensions of our image. So you have like all of these like different options or presets that you can choose from, and it just depends on what you want. You can enter the dimensions if you want as well. You can switch to units. You can switch the units if you want. Whatever, it just depends on what your goal is, and then again you can adjust the resolution and everything. There are other options that you can adjust, but that's more catered towards whenever you're setting up your scene before you start a final render. And you always do that. You always do a lower resolution before you jump to your final render. So with this setup, I'm going to go ahead and close this. There's two ways of rendering out your image. I'm going to switch here from modeling to rendering, and these top options are top bar changes, and we have something called render here, and we can render our sequence. We do not want to do batch render if you're using a free version or a student version of Maya, because it puts a watermark on your render. But if you have a paid version, your best bet is to do a batch render. If you have a student version, again, you're going to do a render sequence. Clicking on this checker box tells you where it's going to output. You can choose an alternate output file location if you want, and you can choose the camera, whichever you have set up, and then all you have to do is once you have all of that setting, you just like either hit render sequence and close, or render sequence and then you can close it later. And then the other way that you can do this is you go to Arnold render view, and this is something that you do regardless if you're testing out or framing your object within your canvas. So I normally do that before I start a final render, and you can see over here that, you know, we can sort of have this placed a little better. So like if we had something like this is framed a little better and this is what I want, so I can either render it out from here or I can save this. This is okay for sort of single images, but the only thing is that this will save a JPEG and it won't give me the format that I want my image to be in. So, but this will give you the timestamp it takes to render out a single image. So once it's done, all you're going to do is go to File and you're going to click on Save Image. You can click on Save Image Options if you want to change any of those, and then you can save image. It'll ask you where to save it. You can save it on your desktop, and you can hit save here. Oh, I already have something like that. I guess demo render 1. Save. And as you can see, it just saved my image over here. But it's a JPEG, and you'll notice that that's not the option that I chose from here. So if you want it to be the same format that you have set up in your render settings, that's when you are going to go to your render, and you're going to go to your render sequence, and it's going to do the same thing. It's rendering it out now, and this looks a little different than the Arnold render view, but you sort of have an idea how long it's going to take. And this will go to your root folder, your project folder, in the images section. So if you want to go and find that, you're probably going to have to go to where your project is saved at, and you will find it there. And I'm going to go ahead and let that render out, and then I will go over how to do rendering for an animation once this is done. I believe if I try to close this, it might crash. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let it do its thing. It's probably not going to take very long anymore. So it's almost done. And there you have it. It's complete. And now if I go to my project location, you will notice that if I go to my classes here, 2020, and then it's gonna be in my images, and you can see here that it gave it that, you know, cube.png, as I said before, the prefix of cube.png. Now if I wanted to do an image sequence, I'm going to go back to my render settings. If I wanted to do like an animation or something, and I'm going to change this to this. Any of the other options work too, but I like this one, name number, meaning it will have the frame number .png. So if I put that there, frame padding means that it would be 0001. Now if this was this is how it would change. If this were 0, this is not going to work. So you can see how that would render out the file name. And here you can set the number of frames that you want, so it's going to render out all of these frames for you. and this is what the resolution is. So if I lower the resolution just for this demo, so we can get a quick view of this, you'll see that yeah, we can do a quick render of all of these frames. So once I've done that, I'm going to hit close and I'm going to go to render, not batch render. Again, I don't want that watermark, so I'm going to go here and it's going to start rendering out everything, and it's going to go from one frame to the next frame. And you're going to see like very slight differences because in the first, and you can kind of see over here to which frame it's at. And it's going to move over every time it does a frame. And since, you know, there's very little changes, it's hard to tell if you move from one frame to the other visually. So once it's done, go back to that location and go to your images, and there you have your image sequence. As you can see, there's a little bit of movement, depends on your animation again, and you have your image sequence without a watermark. And you can always render out this image sequence in After Effects or any other video editing program. I don't know how long this is going to take to open. I don't know how long that's going to take to open, but yeah, it's going to take a couple of minutes for After Effects to open, and I'm just going to go ahead and close this and wait for it. Wait for it. I have like a gazillion programs open at the bottom over here. Should probably like close those once, you know, in order to have like stuff working a little faster. But I guess it's okay for this video. I have another tutorial as to how to do a batch render from After Effects, and you guys can always go ahead and watch that if you want to learn how to render all of these images out in you know, MP4 format or any format that you wish to. So here you go, it's here already, but I can do a quick demo here, drag and drop that there. Oops, probably close this and go back to Finder, drag and drop. New composition. Okay. And close the effects and controls. I'm opening After Effects after a long time. Interesting. Like I said, you can go ahead and watch that other demo where you can always, like, you know, bring your image sequence in another program in order to render it out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next demo.